It's the black guy in the corner, but they'd rather see a nigga on the corner. They say I'm stealing Nick's clips like I'm stealing Nick's chick, not knowing that I hit him first week for the lick. I said, Nick, I could post here while you post there. Let's run the ads up, then let's meet up over there.
Good evening, everybody. You are watching America First. My name is Nicholas J. Fuentes. We got a great show for you tonight. Very excited to be back here with you tonight on Thursday. We have a lot to talk about, lots to get into. Big show. Day 20, our featured story. We are talking about day 20 of the U.S.-Israel war in Iran. Some big developments. We got some other stuff too. I don't know how you guys are feeling about it. I feel like I'm getting a little tired of the war in Iran. It's been 3 weeks. Tomorrow is going to be week number 3. We're entering week 4. And it looks like there's no end in sight. As we've been saying, the war just goes on and on. Initially, they said days, then weeks. Then they said a couple weeks, a few weeks, 4 weeks. Now they're saying it's going to be at least another month, it seems, based on what has been reported today. And our featured story tonight, the big development in the war is that the operation to open up the Strait of Hormuz has begun. Yes, the Trump administration has planned to forcibly reopen the Strait of Hormuz using the U.S. military. I don't know that anybody believes this is going to work, how this is even going to happen. And if it does, it seems like there is a high possibility that there will be a lot of American casualties. And so today, U.S. jet fighters and helicopters did a number of air raids on ships and targets on the land around the Strait of Hormuz. And the operation has begun. Once again, this is going to be extraordinarily difficult because the way that the Iranians have closed the strait is with missiles and drones, of which they have a virtually unlimited supply. They're making more of them all the time. They've got millions of them. They're launching hundreds of drones now every single day. And because the Strait of Hormuz is so narrow, it's only about 24 miles across at the narrowest point, Iran can launch a drone from hundreds of miles inland and with almost 100% accuracy hit a ship because that's just how narrow it is. So if the goal is to use the military to reopen the strait, you have to ask, how are we going to suppress every drone and every missile that is launched at the strait from anywhere inside of Iran? It doesn't even seem possible. And yet the operation has already begun today. The U.S. military says it is going to take weeks at the minimum to get to a point where we even consider escorting commercial ships through the strait using the U.S. military. Even then, they say we're not going to be able to guarantee 100% safe passage through the strait. So what are we doing? They admit, they say it's going to take another few weeks at the minimum, 3 weeks in, 3 more weeks to open up the strait. They say that is the minimum amount of time required to suppress drone and missile fire sufficiently. Whatever else they might be planning, and we'll get into that, before they're comfortable even trying in a minimal way. And that leads me to my next point. One of the parts of the operation they are considering is potentially invading with an amphibious assault force the islands in the actual Strait of Hormuz. So not necessarily invading the Iranian mainland, but invading some of the Iranian islands in the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. military will be able to establish a beachhead, and they'll be able to deploy logistics and potentially anti-missile systems, other types of equipment, and that might be used as a springboard either for further attacks or for defense of shipping in the strait. To that end, the U.S. military is now sending close to 5,000 Marines on 3 ships. It's an amphibious assault force, and that seems to me to be an operation to actually try to invade on the land. And there's sort of a cruel irony here, or maybe something funny. Trump is always saying we're not going to put boots on the ground. He said we're open to it. I don't have the yips about it, but he has said there's no imminent operation to put boots on the ground. Nobody wants to say there's going to be boots on the ground. And so maybe this is like a technicality where they can land on an island so they can invade one of the islands in the strait. And then they can say, well, we never put boots on the ground in Iran's mainland. On Iran's mainland, we only put boots on the islands. And I'm not joking. I mean, this is in all the papers that are reporting about this. They say maybe that is one of the political considerations. If you invade the island, then you can say, well, we never put boots on the ground on the mainland. So that makes it different. Well, I don't see the difference at all, actually. Seems to come with basically the same risks in principle, and seems to be equally an escalation against Iran. Maybe marginally less, but I mean, that's roughly the same thing. So they're talking about invading Iran's islands with Marines. Those Marines will arrive in the Middle East next week. So again, this is the timeline. Think about it. The USS Gerald Ford is currently in Greece, where they are repairing the ship because the kitchen exploded or something. Number one superpower, by the way. Number one empire. Oh, there's a fire in the kitchen. We have to, Mayday, Mayday, send the carrier to an island. We need repairs immediately. Okay, no fire extinguishers. So the Gerald Ford is out of commission, they say, for at least a week. Marines, at least 4,500 Marines on 3 ships are headed to the Middle East. They arrive in a little over a week. And the Pentagon is saying it's going to take at least a few weeks to reopen the strait. So when you put the timeline together, you understand this war is not ending anytime soon. It's going on at least another week when the Ford is done being repaired, when the Marines are deployed. And it seems that that is actually when the operation to open the strait really begins. And so then it's going to be another 2 or 3 or 4 more weeks of fighting. In the meantime, the supply of energy, oil and gas in the world continues to be constrained. Price of crude oil went past $120 a barrel today and seems to be only getting worse since the United States and Israel escalated their attacks on Iran's energy infrastructure yesterday. So how long can this really go on? It's going to go on, it seems, for another 3 to 4 weeks. How much pressure will that put on the American economy? What will happen in the intervening time? A lot of issues here. Last development in the war with Iran, and this is a minor one, we got confirmation from Pete Hegseth today at a press conference that yes, indeed, this is real. The Pentagon is asking the White House to approve $200 billion for the war in Iran. This was just a rumor yesterday. We covered this last night, and at the time it was a rumor that the Pentagon had a number of different appropriations requests, different versions of it, and one among them was a $200 billion package. We don't know the details. We don't know what's contained in it, but that is the price tag. Today, Pete Hegseth admitted, he said, well, hey, man, wars cost money. He said it costs money to fight the bad guys. By the way, don't you love our most professional, most serious, most presidential administration? We need money to fight the bad guys. I don't know about you, but I'm really tired of how remedial the vocabulary is in the White House. We need money to fight the bad guys. Is that what it is? Pete Hegseth says we need $200 billion. And get a load of this, it gets better. Earlier in the year, Trump was asked about budget reconciliation. This is the process whereby once per year, the Senate can pass an appropriations bill with a simple majority. Normally in the Senate, you need 60 votes, a 3/5 majority to pass anything. Once per year, there's an exception. You can pass a major piece of legislation with only 51 votes, only a simple majority. It's called budget reconciliation. Earlier in the year, Trump was asked, are you going to use budget reconciliation again in 2026? And if you are, what are you going to use it to get done? And Trump said, I'm not really interested in that. I'm not interested. We don't need it this year. We covered this 3, maybe 4 weeks ago. And I said, that's such a stupid thing to say because we should use every tool that is available to us to change policy. If you have it, why not use it? So it seemed that up until this point, we weren't even going to utilize the reconciliation process this year. Maybe you can see where this is going. Do you want to know how they're going to allocate $200 billion for our war in Iran? The budget reconciliation process. So the Republicans are going to bypass Democrat opposition using the reconciliation process, not to give money for infrastructure, not to give money for a middle-class tax cut, not for a border wall or deportations, anything like that. No, House Republicans, Senate Republicans are excited to use this process so that they can appropriate $200 billion to bomb Iran. And they're actually enthusiastic about it. They're saying this gives us the urgency to do something. And that follows a familiar pattern. We'll get into that later tonight. $200 billion for a war in Iran. It just gets better and better and better, doesn't it? Every single day, every single day. You thought it was good when we bombed Iran with Midnight Hammer. Fast forward to we're bombing Iran with Israel. And they say it'll go on for 4 days. We're in week number 3 at the tail end of it. Now they're telling us the price tag is $200 billion, which, by the way, that means the war in Iran, if they get that, it is already more expensive than the war in Ukraine. $188 billion for the war in Ukraine. They want $200 billion for Iran, and that is on top of the $30 billion that we've already spent. Okay? So the war in Iran is going to be something like 25%, 30% more expensive than the 4-year war in Ukraine, and we're not even at the end of week 3 yet. The things we do for Israel. Mr. President, I've seen what you can do for Israel. Do that for us. There's no hope. That's not going to happen. But anyway, we'll talk all about that. We're also going to talk, if we have time tonight, about the new piece in the Wall Street Journal. We got some more confirmation. Not that we needed it. But there's an exclusive in the Wall Street Journal today which confirms that President Trump is done with mass deportations. If there were any doubts, if anybody was still in denial, and there are some people still in denial, now we have it verified. It is coming directly from the top. Trump says he doesn't even want to use the word mass deportations anymore. He says, I think people don't like that. So let's stop saying mass deportation. Let's start saying criminals. They're also saying, now that Kristi Noem is out at DHS and they got a new secretary of DHS, they're saying this is an opportunity to change all the policies as well. So we talked about this last Monday when the House Republicans had their retreat in southern Florida and they made the determination that they were going to stop talking about it. Now they're saying, since Noem is out, the new secretary of DHS is going to have a much lighter touch. And he's actually changing all the policies. So, for example, they're not going to arrest illegals in their homes without a warrant. They're not going to be conducting these huge operations in cities like they did in Chicago and Minneapolis and LA. He says they're going to cooperate with local and municipal governments instead of being adversarial. He says his mission is to keep ICE out of the news. Well, you know how you keep ICE out of the news? You don't deport anybody. That's the only way you keep ICE out of the news. And yet I still see people coping. They're saying, yeah, but the Trump administration is doing self-deportations. They're going to stop illegals from having a bank account. Are they? Okay, sure. Yeah. It's always something like that, right? Isn't it? Every day, every week, month, you get the real story, which is that's not happening. The deportations are over. They decided it's too unpopular. But then you always have this contingent on Twitter that says, yeah, but any day now, they're going to do E-Verify. Any day now, they're going to ban illegals from having a bank account, from having, I don't know, from ordering DoorDash. And it's always like 5-dimensional chess. What we wanted was every illegal alien kicked out of the country, like physically kicked in the ass and flying over the border back to Mexico. That's what we voted for. When Trump campaigned, he didn't say, we're going to have net negative migration using the community survey from the... That wasn't on the sign. That wasn't in the commercial. Trump said mass deportations. It was fucking border wall. I think the F word was in it at one point, wasn't it? It was real, tall, powerful, physical, 30-foot concrete border wall. And they're all going back. We're literally going to put them in cannons and shoot them back to Mexico. Weren't they literally saying that? And now now that it's not happening, it's always like some 5-dimensional chess. It's like, well, you see, what Trump is doing is he's not going to let illegals buy Sprite using their Snap cards, and that's going to make them reconsider living here. It's like, what are you talking about? They need to be physically removed by big policemen, like big, giant policemen need to physically remove them at the end of the barrel of a gun. And people go, so Trump is going to close their bank accounts, and then, what are you talking about? Anyway, we'll get into that as well if we have time. It's going to be a good show. Before we do, I want to remind you to smash the follow button on Rumble, smash the like button, leave a comment. Let me know what you think about the show. Check out our merch store at Fuentes.store. But you might want to wait a little bit because we have a big spring lineup. I believe it's coming out this Monday. So stay tuned. We have our brand new spring collection, little spring seasonal collection. I think you're going to like it. Some people said that our merch for Christmas was too generic. That's what we were going for, okay? It was a generational run. We had all these normies watching the show, and so we wanted to sell the normies a shirt that said, like, America First, okay? It was intentional. Some people said, it's too generic. Yeah, well, you should see the people that love the show. They're total normgroids, okay? They're total groids. They don't know anything. This is coworker reels. You're watching coworker reels right now, so they're not ready for that. But in the springtime, we're switching it up a little bit, and I think you're going to be pleased with it. We have a big, new, very fresh collection coming out next week. That's going to be Fuentes.store. If you want to support the show, subscribe at americafirst.plus. $15 a month to get access to the whole archive, every episode of the show. It's almost like 2,000 episodes at this point. And it goes back 10 years. It's crazy all the things I've covered over the years. COVID and the Trump election and BLM and the vax mandates. It's like there's a lot of stuff there. Every debate stream, commentary stream, collaboration, it's all there. And for $100 a month, you get to be in the exclusive group chat with me. And I'm hanging out in there, but I try. I really try. You know what I'm finding? Can I just be real for a sec? Can I be real? It's getting so hard to find people that I really enjoy talking to. Because I really like talking to people that are smart and funny. Here's like the Groyper's dilemma. Can I tell you the Groyper dilemma? It's like normies are too blue-pilled and liberal and retarded to really ever be friends with. Because with an actual turbo normie, they still don't want to be racist, and they don't really engage with politics, and they like sports a little bit too much. and they're just a little bit insufferable. They're pussy whipped with their girlfriends. There's always like something going on. And so you need to be able to groip out. But then on the flip side, if you hang out with all groipers, a lot of them are complete chuds. They're like trad Christians, or they're nat sock LARPers. They can't watch a movie without like verbally stimming constantly, saying like, that's blue pill, that guy's black. And I can't hang out with that either. I can't do that either. You know, you want to go on vacation and people go, I want to tour all the cathedrals when we go there. It's like, really? I want to get food. So I feel like as I get older, it's so difficult to meet people and make friends because I'm looking for people that are smart and funny. They need to be like normie enough that they're not shutting out all the time. They're not totally ridiculous chuds. But also they need to be chudly enough that they're not like, I don't know, calling you racist all the time or cringing when you say the N-word or whatever. So it's a little difficult. And so I'm hanging out in the group chat and it's just a lot of chuds. I'll say that much. It's a lot of chuds. And I go on the group chat and I'm like, guys, let's just be normal. Can we just be normal? I still see myself as a normal person. I know that sounds insane given what I am, but I still see myself as a normal person. I can meet somebody and not shut out about politics in the first 30 minutes. You know what I mean? Anyway. But whatever. That's my life. That's just me. Okay, and that's just me. That's on being a nigga, you know. But hey, America First Plus. I'm trying. I'm trying to make friends in the group chat. I'm hanging out. We're trying to make it work. Otherwise, I'm dropping bonus content in there all the time. A lot of good stuff in there. A lot of insider baseball. That's America First Plus. Be sure to check it out. Okay, with that, we're going to dive in. We're going to get into the show. And our first story, we'll talk about these mass deportations, and I'll be a little bit brief because I know we're maybe beating a dead horse here a little bit. I'm kind of getting that feeling. But it just needs to be said again because a lot of people are really in denial about this. I don't know if that's you. I don't know who's watching this. But there's a lot of people that really seem to be under the impression that there's a deportation policy going on. And I'm sorry to tell you, it's just not. It's dead. It's over. It isn't happening. And the latest on this front, the reason we're covering it is because of this big exclusive from the Wall Street Journal, literally hot off the presses. This came out a few hours ago, this evening. And they have actually confirmed that it goes all the way up to the top. President Trump himself is now saying mass deportations are over. So it's not coming from Susie Wiles, the chief of staff. It's not coming from James Blair, her deputy. It's not coming from the other forces, the bad advisors, the bad personnel. No, we now have it confirmed 100% that mass deportations have not only been shut down, they have been shut down by Trump. And they have been shut down because Trump believes they are too unpopular. Trump is under the impression that mass deportations, even the phrase, is so unpopular that if they keep going, they're going to get killed in the midterms. He blames that. He thinks that is the reason they're going to lose. So he is telling his personnel in DHS, he's telling Susie Wiles, telling House Republicans, stop saying those words. He's saying instead, use the word criminal. We're deporting criminals. And they're also changing all the policies. As you know, the Secretary of DHS, Kristi Noem, was recently let go. She was fired. And she's got a ton of problems. Part of why she was fired is because she might be going to jail with her alleged boyfriend, her alleged paramour, Corey Lewandowski, because the two of them are in some very deep crap over some of these contracts that DHS is giving out. And this is covered extensively also in the Journal. So partly they're fired for that reason, but also Kristi Noem and a lot of people in DHS are being flushed out because they want to reset the policies. The new Secretary of DHS is now going to reverse many of the mass deportation policies. For example, there's two policies in particular they're getting rid of. One, some of the biggest boost to the deportation numbers is coming from these big operations that are targeting Democrat cities. So you might recall the most recent operation was in Minneapolis. I forget the name of it. But that is when you had thousands of Border Patrol and ICE. That is what catalyzed the two protesters that died and the protests and the riots. That was a targeted operation when they surged law enforcement to Minneapolis and they started doing big raids and big patrols. That was boosting the deportation numbers. That's done now. That's over. So they did operations like that in Minneapolis, in Chicago, in LA, in New York. Under the new Secretary of DHS, Markwayne Mullins, he actually said those are canceled. You're not getting any more of those. That's number one. Number two, there was a secretive policy in the DHS where ICE was making arrests inside private domiciles without getting a warrant from a judge. And there's questions about the constitutionality of that, legality of that. That's a big source of protest from the left, from the Democrats. Mullins says that's finished too. We're not going to be raiding houses without a warrant anymore. By the way, that also happens to be one of the demands of Chuck Schumer. That's why the Democrats have shut down the government partially and why they've defunded DHS, because among other things, they want ICE to stop the warrantless arrests inside private residences. So this is a stand-down order. The mass deportations, they're not running on them, they're not saying the words anymore, and the policy is effectively dead. They're done. Whereas at one point they were maximizing deportations, now they're trying to have them plateau. Now they're trying to moderate the deportations as much as possible. They've changed the personnel, they've changed the policy, and now you're getting something different. And this is the story from the Journal. It says, quote, President Trump is seeking to lower the profile of his mass deportation effort and has directed his top advisors to adopt a new approach on one of his central campaign promises. In conversations with top advisors and his wife Melania, Trump has become convinced that some of his administration's deportation policies have gone too far. They went too far. Deporting 230,000 people is just too far. Biden let in 10 million people. He was letting in 2.5 million per year, but removing 10% of that total, it's too far. Guys, this isn't us. We have to stop. This is too many. He says it's gone too far. And Trump believes that voters don't like the term mass deportation. Really? Well, you know, it would have been nice to know that when you ran on that 2 years ago. Really? So Trump ran on mass deportations in 24. In 26, he says, I don't think voters like that. I don't think voters like Are you kidding me? Seriously? The promises you ran on in 24, you are halfway through your term, and now you say, I don't think the voters like that. That's how you won. The voters elected you to do that. That's what you were saying when you won the popular vote and the Electoral College and the House and the Senate. Now he's decided, well, I don't think the voters like that. Well, that would have been good to know. Maybe there should have been some transparency at the beginning or, before the administration started. He says, the voters don't like it. Great. Awesome. Loving it. The president has told them he wants to see more attention on arresting the bad guys and less chaos in American cities. The bad guys. It's like when Pete Hegseth says, we need $200 billion to fight the bad guys. Yeah, we gotta, no, we don't want to deport every illegal alien. We want to stop the bad guys. Right. The article goes on. It says the desire for an immigration reset is being driven by Trump's White House chief of staff, Susie Wiles, who believes the president's immigration team has turned one of his marquee issues into more of a challenging issue ahead of the midterms. It's a little challenging. As a result, the administration is attempting to change not only how it talks about the issue, but also what enforcement looks like on the ground. Great. So it's thorough. The shift has been spearheaded by White House border czar Tom Homan since he took over ICE operations in Minneapolis. ICE leadership isn't moving forward for now with those high-profile operations like the ones it previously conducted in big blue cities like Chicago, D.C., and Minneapolis. Arrests of immigrants have ticked down to roughly 1,200 a day from more than 1,500 a day when ICE was running its unprecedented operation in Minnesota. And by the way, it's lower than that. So according to the Journal, they say it's 1,200 arrests per day. I talk to people in government. They tell me the rolling 7-day daily average is 900. The rolling daily average number of arrests is 900. So quick math. If you arrest 1,000 per day, that's 365,000 per year. Out of all the people that get arrested, not all of them get deported. So if you're arresting 900 per day, the very highest number of deportations is 365,000. It's not going to be that. So we're talking maybe 300,000, maybe fewer than that. We're on track, in other words, for roughly the same or less deportations, fewer deportations than in 2025, if that's the rolling 7-day average, which is what I've been informed it is. Trump's advisors view the firing of DHS Secretary Kristi Noem as a prime moment for a reset. Senator Markwayne Mullin, the president's pick to succeed Noem, promised to reverse several of her ICE directives. Great, including one policy giving officers permission to force entry into immigrants' private homes without a criminal warrant signed by a judge. Mullin said, quote, "My goal in 6 months is that we're not in the lead story every day." Trump has complained to advisors in recent days about bad headlines the administration received under Noem's tenure, and has asked aides if they were aware of her unusual contract approval process. On the campaign trail, Trump suggested he would deport as many as 20 million people. No, not going to happen. So when Trump ran in 2024, the slogan was mass deportations. We're going to physically remove 20 million people. It will be the largest deportation effort in American history. He said, remember Operation Wetback under Eisenhower? We're going to deport 20 million people like that. Here we are, once again, it's only a year and a few months in. So he's inaugurated late January 25. It is March 26. It's a year and 2 months. The first year, they deported almost nobody. They deported something like 230 to 360,000 people is roughly the numbers. And even if you isolate interior removals, that is still fewer removals than Obama's first year in office in 2009. Okay? They said that is okay and that's justifiable because we need more funding, we need more detention space, we need more personnel, they need more training. And so that's why the big, beautiful bill last year authorized something like $200 billion for Homeland Security. And nearly $100 billion of that is going to ICE. And a lot of that is going to the wall and detention facilities, all the things they said they needed. And they hired over 10,000 ICE agents, and they're buying the land and the facilities. And now that they've got all the resources, now they're telling us, well, we're just not going to do it. We're not going to say mass deportations. We're not going to do mass deportations. Stephen Miller was shooting for 1 million per year, was his target. Now they're going to get, if you're lucky, maybe a third of that, maybe a quarter of that. They said 20 million, which would have been 5 million per year. Now you're going to get maybe 250,000 per year. So you're getting 20 times less. Literally, you're getting 20 times less than what they promised. They're changing the slogan, not even in the middle, in the first year, and now it's over. And Trump was convinced to do this because Susie Wiles told him it's unpopular. Now, here's what really happened, okay? And I can say this with some authority because I predicted it. I told you this is exactly how it would play out, which is that you're going to try to deport all these people. Liberals are going to freak out. The media is going to shine a spotlight on it, and they're going to cast it in a very negative light. And what this is going to do is generate bad press, bad publicity, and low approval ratings. It's those two things. And if you know anything about Trump, know this. Trump, because he's an egomaniac, he is absolutely allergic to both of those things. He hates bad press. He hates bad headlines. He hates low approval ratings. And so this was inevitable that it would play out this way. It was just inevitable because if you are going to do a massive deportation effort, it's not going to go unnoticed. And the Democrat city machines, these political machines in Chicago, New York, LA, they're going to fight it tooth and nail with their activists, with the media, with the entertainment industry, all the above. And it's going to generate a lot of controversy. It's going to be very contentious, and that's going to drive negative media. Negative media begets low approval, low favorability. And so it was always a question of, if you're going to do this, you need to have the political will to withstand that pressure. That was really the question. If you wanted to accurately predict, will mass deportations happen, you had to really ask the question, if they try, if they marshal the resources to do it, will they then be able to withstand the inevitable pressure which will come as a result? And that's a question about Trump as a man. And this is why in 2024, I said, you're not going to get it, because Trump is not going to stick it out. He's going to get those bad headlines. He's going to get the lower approval ratings. And the second that happens, he's going to pick up the phone and he's going to call Stephen Miller and he's going to shut it down. And do you want to know why I knew that would be the case? Because it already happened. That already happened. And it happens with everything. It literally happens with COVID. It happened with BLM. It happened with this in the first term. And I've told this story a million times, but this is the thing. People that got red-pilled after COVID, they just weren't there. They didn't watch it. The history has either been forgotten or rewritten. But I was actually there up close and personal. I had friends in the admin in 2018, and that is precisely how it went down in the first term, which is that they started to try to build the wall. They started to try to deport a lot of people. You might remember they had that family separation policy. That's how these huge caravans of illegals from the Northern Triangle were getting in. All these illegals would come to the border with an unaccompanied minor. It wasn't always a family member, or a child, and their child, son, daughter, their nephew, cousin. Frequently, they were strangers. But if an illegal alien had an unaccompanied minor with them, because the minors couldn't be detained in the same space as the adults, they would catch those people and release them. Those people would surrender at a port of entry with their minor in tow. And because the illegal and the minor cannot be detained in the same facility, they'd be picked up and they'd be sent out into the country. So Trump had a family separation policy where the minors were detained separately from the adults. And that allowed them to be detained indefinitely at the border. And so they weren't caught and released. Well, that's where the story about kids in cages started, because they said the Trump administration is imprisoning children in cages like the Holocaust. And they destroyed Trump with that in 2018 in the midterm election. They said it's kids in cages, concentration camps. They did it at the Oscars, at the Grammys, just like they did this year. And I have it on authority from people in the admin that it went down the same way. Trump picked up the phone and said, Stephen Miller, we got to stop. In the previous administration, it was Christian Nielsen, I think was the name, so long ago. But Trump picked up the phone 10 years ago, 8 years ago, and said, we're getting killed. They're talking about kids in cages, and they ended the policy. They reversed the policy. That's exactly what they're doing right now. And that's because that's who Trump is. And ultimately, that is who you have to blame, because I can already see what is happening. There's sort of like two different camps of denialists. And there's one camp that just insists this is not happening. Let's be very honest. Mass deportations, at this point, you can say it was a lie. It was a lie. It was a scam. It was a fraud. Trump said we were going to have 20 million deportations. We're not getting anything close to that. It's not happening. But there are a lot of people that are in denial, and they will just believe anything. So they're coping about the retreat from Minneapolis. They're coping about the self-deportation numbers, inflating those numbers, using the community survey and some data artifacts to overestimate it by an order of magnitude. They're just simply in denial. They still think that someday, one day, mass deportations are going to happen. Like, they just don't live in reality. But then there's another camp of denialists that say it's not Trump's fault. They say it's his advisors, it's his personnel, it's all these people around him that are failing him. If only he had the right people. And here's the irony. Maybe it's not ironic, but here's why that's not true. Unlike the first term, that is totally not true in the second term. Stephen Miller has way more power. He's the deputy chief of staff. You have a lot of really good people in Border Patrol and in DHS and in ICE. And you even have people in the administration that are actually reaching out to outside groups. They spun up this website. It's called Mass Deportation Coalition, something like that. I don't know the actual URL. But if you look this up, Coalition for Mass Deportations, there is this outside group of nonprofits and activist groups. They're begging the Trump administration to follow through. They're trying to lean on the administration. And there are actually a lot of people in the administration who are working with that group. And they're pleading with them, saying, please criticize Trump. Please put pressure on Trump, because they can't do it from the inside. So, ironically, in the first term, you could make the argument and say, yeah, well, Trump has all these bad people. They don't want to see the deportations happen. They're disobeying Trump. They're giving him bad advice, whatever. In the second term, it's the opposite. No, you have a lot of good people giving Trump advice. You have a lot of good people in DHS. You have a lot of good personnel. They want to see it happen. They are running into the obstacle of Trump himself. If it were up to them, it would be happening, but it's up to Trump. And so now we sort of solved for X. Who was the problem? It was always Trump. It was never the personnel. It was always Trump. And you want to know why? Because Trump always had the power. Trump appoints the personnel. Trump chooses the advisors. Trump has the discretion to listen to one advisor and not another. He does it all the time. Case in point, Brooke Rollins is the Secretary of Agriculture. So she represents the big agriculture interest. And big agriculture loves illegal immigration because they employ low-skilled illegal aliens on the farms. Consequently, Brooke Rollins doesn't want to see a ton of illegal migrant labor deported, because she, in a sense, is captured by the industry that she's supposed to administrate, that she's supposed to regulate. So Brooke Rollins is against deportations. She's against job site raids. She's in favor of expanding visas for migrant workers. Kristi Noem, on the other hand, well, as Secretary of DHS, Homeland Security, her job, her mandate is to deport as many people as possible. And Stephen Miller in the White House, as the Deputy Chief of Staff, he is trying to work with Kristi Noem to get these deportations up. And he's encouraging job site raids and getting the migrant farm workers out and raiding a meat processing plant in Nebraska and a Hyundai plant in Georgia and so on. Well, you see that in the court of Trump, there's two different people with two different agendas, and they're going to have different advice. So Kristi Noem is going to go to Trump and say, we want to do all the deportations. And Brooke Rollins is going to go to Trump and say, we want more visas and fewer deportations. Well, who does Trump listen to? He's got a better relationship with Brooke Rollins. She was in the first admin. She ran AFPI, America First Policy Institute, which is the official Trump think tank after Trump left office. And Trump actually sidelined Project 2025 at Heritage, which was good, to prioritize AFPI because those are his people. And so it's like in the first term, everybody said, oh, it's the personnel, it's the advisors, it's everybody else. We need to put the right people in front of Trump. But Trump consistently chooses all the wrong people and consistently makes all the wrong decisions. In 2024, he had an option, AFPI or Project 2025. He chose AFPI. With regard to deportations, he had a choice, Stephen Miller and Kristi Noem or Brooke Rollins and Susie Wiles. He chose Brooke Rollins and Susie Wiles. And ultimately, the decision came down to the fact that he didn't want the bad press. What you need to understand about Trump is that his dream is to be beloved by New York City. He wants the New York Times to love him. He wants CNN to love him. Anyone that knows Trump is nodding their head right now. And I'm sure there are people watching the show that know Trump because Trump is like a girl. Every day he's on the phone all day, kicking his feet and giggling. I'm not making this up, calling people for hours and hours and hours. This is the greatest economy. I'm the greatest president, blah, blah. Anyone who knows Trump and talks to him knows this is true. His dream is the approval and the validation of the New York Times, of New York City. He wants to be beloved. And so if you're doing something unpopular with the media or the entertainment industry, the left, the masses, Trump is never gonna follow through because he doesn't want to upset those people. And so I said in 2024, you're not gonna get mass deportations because Trump is gonna cuck, because Trump wants to be loved by the media and they're gonna hate this. And because Trump ultimately chose Brooke Rollins over Project 2025. He chose Chris LaCivita and Susie Wiles over Hope Hicks and John McEntee, let's say. He chose the disloyal personnel that threw him under the bus after January 6th over the good personnel that tried to salvage his White House in 2020. So I knew based on the personnel choices, I knew based on his temperament that he had not changed at all. And by that, I mean not for the better, that we were going to get the exact same thing and the exact same story. And this is how Trump has been conditioned over time. I want you to notice something also. In 2024, there was so much fanfare around Trump, you almost forget how it was in the first campaign. In 2016, everybody hated Trump. The media hated Trump. All the institutions hated Trump. The Republican Party hated Trump. Everybody hated Trump. And why is that? Because in 2016, Trump was actually a radical. Trump was actually an insurgent force. So who didn't like him? The deep state, the establishment, the institutions. That was the nucleus of Trumpism. There was actually a great article in The Spectator by Christopher Caldwell, and he said this, and it's brilliant. He said that the actual nucleus of Trumpism is the idea of the deep state, and that Trump is this democratic populist force against those institutions. And so in 2016, that's how it felt. It was this populist wave, the people and Trump at the front of it against the establishment, the institutions, the deep state. And all these institutions are very incestuous. It's the permanent bureaucracy in Washington. It's the lobbyists, the consultants, the super PACs. But it's also the Ivy Leagues and academia and big law. It's also Wall Street and the asset managers and private equity. And it's also the entertainment industry, Hollywood and the mainstream media. It's also Silicon Valley. At that time, it was big tech. So it was all of the institutions, all of the powerful, the true deep state, holistically, against Trump. But what you saw in 2024 is that all the institutions actually acquiesced to Trump. Did you notice? Again, this gets back to a lot of people just weren't there for the original victory. In 2016, it was like us against the world. And all the media coverage was negative, and they were ripping him apart every day. And the party was always trying basically to sabotage him, his own party. In 2024, different story. Who was at the inauguration? Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, OpenAI, Elon Musk. They were all there. Mark Zuckerberg didn't even put any money into this election. He put $300 million against Trump in 2020. And Tim Mellon donated $200 million to Trump. And Elon Musk donated $300 million to Trump. And the Israel lobby donated to Trump. And so did Ken Griffin from Citadel. And so did Andreessen Horowitz. And if you looked, whereas in 2016, the small dollar contributions were 60% of Trump's fundraising, in 2024, it was about 30%. So it flipped. And they've conditioned Trump to do the things that they want him to do. And what they want him to do is to keep the flow of cheap labor, cheap skilled labor, cheap unskilled labor. What they want him to do is to bomb Iran, keep the weapons flowing into Ukraine. They want him to intervene in the Congo for the minerals. They want him to deregulate AI. They want their corporate tax cut in the big, beautiful bill. They have conditioned him because Trump wants to be liked. He wants the approval of the establishment. And this is why they've effectively stood down. And they condition him by allowing him to take the path of least resistance and never fight those battles. And everybody that's making excuses for him, you need to realize we elected him to fight those battles. We elected him to be hated by the Israel lobby, to be hated by Wall Street, to be hated by the multinational corporations, to be hated by the asset managers. We elected him to be hated by those people and to fight those people and ultimately to defeat them. Now it's the opposite. Now he's fighting against his own people to protect them. And this is what is so sick about this influencer cadre that is constantly trying to tell you that everything's on the up and up. Because while Trump opened up the floodgates for more migrant workers on farms, more H-1Bs, more foreign student visas for the universities, while Trump says he's okay with home prices going up indefinitely, he says we want housing to be more expensive than ever because we're protecting the people that own them. And Trump is celebrating the stock market rising. He's cutting the corporate tax rates and doing all those things. In the meantime, he's not releasing the Epstein files. He's going to war with Iran, not building the wall, not carrying out the mass deportations. And so now he's beloved by the institutions. Trump has told the institutions, get behind me. I'll protect you. I'll protect your data centers. I'll protect your home values. I'll protect the asset bubble. I'll protect your profits and your cheap labor. I'll protect your complicity in Jeffrey Epstein's island. And it is him and the influencers taking the fight to the people, attacking the people. If you want the Epstein files, I don't want your vote. If you're against the war with Iran, you're not MAGA. If you attack Mark Levin, you're not MAGA. If you don't like the big, beautiful bill, you're not MAGA. Now the war is on behalf of the institutions against the people. It's on behalf of the elite against the democratic forces. This is, in a nutshell, what is going on. And that's why you have to say Trump is the problem. Now, I don't expect everybody to maybe go head on against Trump. Maybe that's suicidal politically because Trump is still extremely popular. He's still the leader of the party and the movement and the president, and he's at the top of the pyramid. But ultimately, you must realize that there's never going to be a populist movement until Trump is out of the picture. And I'm not insinuating anything there. I just mean until Trump is out of office, until Trump is unpopular, until he is basically rejected or exits the stage, he is always going to, he's not only not going to be the guy, he's going to prevent the guy from emerging. He cannot do it, just constitutionally. Cannot, will not deliver the victory. He's not Caesar. He's not a leader. He's not that guy. And not only is he not the guy, he's depriving us of the guy, But as long as he's around, there is no space for the guy to emerge. Because if that guy were to emerge, he would be attacked by Trump. Case in point, Tucker Carlson. Case in point, Megyn Kelly, Marjorie Greene, Thomas Massey. All the people that have critiqued Trump for the ways in which he has diverged from America First, the ways in which he has betrayed us to the deep state, Trump has used his political capital, he's used his popular support to bludgeon those people and sabotage their careers. So whereas a Marjorie Greene, a Thomas Massey, a Tucker, whereas they might have been able to take the baton or do something or climb the ladder, Trump is not only not helping them, he is suppressing them as potential competitors, challengers. That is why Trump really is the sickness. And this is why I said in 24, it's better actually, maybe, if he loses. Because you see how him being this 80,000-pound gorilla in the middle of the room, him being the center of gravity, him being this cult-like figure that cannot be questioned, cannot be criticized. He's the nucleus. Everything orbits around him. Everything is contingent upon him. You see how he has actually become the biggest opponent. He's become the biggest liability, actually, in a counterintuitive way. You might say, well, he's not perfect, but he's good. No, he's the enemy of the good. Because the good cannot ascend. It can't succeed as long as he is there holding everything in suspense, holding everything in place, and ultimately holding it all back. So that's the mass deportation policy. Don't blame the advisors. Don't blame the personnel. It's him. It's coming from the top. And how sick, by the way, how sick is that? Actually, how evil is that? Trump said in 2024, I'm going to deport 20 million people. We're going to have mass deportations. And then a year in, he just decides, never mind. What is wrong with you people? Why do you vote for politicians that promise you something and then openly just betray the promise? They just openly renege on the promise. So explicitly, it's just a public 180. He said, mass deportations, yeah, we're going to have the largest deportation effort. 20 million people are going to go. He doesn't do it, and a year in, he decides, you know what, never mind, we're going to shift gears. What? Well, then you forfeit your mandate to govern. That's how you got elected. Why do you think you're in the Oval Office? It's because people were furious that we had open borders for 4 years and we got invaded by Venezuela. Venezuela opened up its doors and they flooded our country with like 4 million people from Venezuela alone. And there were millions more on top of that. And it got so bad, even in the south side of Chicago. Black Democrats are going to a town hall meeting or a city hall meeting and complaining about all the Venezuelans on the streets. It was a fever pitch. You campaigned to fix it, to provide the remedy, and a year in, you say, never mind? That's disqualifying. That's a forfeit. How is there anybody left still defending it? And you hear from his defenders, they say, yeah, well, did you see the administration's considering preventing illegals from having bank accounts? Preventing them from having bank accounts? Do they even have bank? What are you talking about? I want them removed from America. I don't care if they have a bank account. Well, but you see, if they can't have a bank account, then maybe they'll leave. Well, I want them to be why do we give ICE $90 billion to hire ICE agents in detention facilities if all we're going to do is close their bank accounts? My bank account got closed. I'm still here. It's always some five-dimensional, well, Trump is considering maybe one day closing the bank accounts, which indirectly will lead to self-deport. Is that what the placard said? When I saw the RNC, maybe I forgot. Maybe it's the Mandela effect. I thought they had signs that said mass deportations, not we're going to ban illegals from having bank accounts so that they'll self-deport and then we'll have net negative migration. What is even the point then? And that leads me to our other story tonight, which is about the war in Iran. We had something else confirmed on the same day, and this is deeply related to this, shifting gears a little bit into our ongoing war in Iran, which will enter the 4th week in 24 hours. Today, our Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, gave a press conference, and he confirmed the report from yesterday, a rumor, that the Pentagon is asking the White House to approve a $200 billion spending package to prosecute the war in Iran. So think about that. You had a mass deportation placard and a no new war placard. 1 year in, they're telling us no mass deportations, but we are going to have a $200 billion endless war in Iran. We are going to have a war in Iran with no clear objectives, mission creep, no exit plan, and it's going to cost us $200 billion. If that's not the biggest scam of all time, then what is? You're promised illegals will be removed from America, which is, by the way, that's a quality of life improvement for everybody. That is one of the worst things about living in America. Illegal immigrants are causing a lot of the problems. In Houston, they're breaking into people's cars and stealing their stuff. In Colorado, they're taking over apartment complexes. In New York, they're putting them up in hotels. And same thing in Chicago, having to build tent cities for them. And you see them everywhere. They are there on the street corner with their kids selling candy bars that they stole from Walgreens. This is the 21st century. We're in a first world country. And we have this peasant population of foreign nationals. We already had an underclass of minorities and refugees and regular old immigrants. Now we got 10 million more here. Trump promised to fix that by kicking these people out. We're not getting that. They're telling us that's no longer popular since a year ago. At the same time, they told us no new wars. We're going to end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours and we're not going to start any wars. The war in Ukraine rages on, and now there's another war in Iran, which will actually cost more money in 3 weeks than the Ukraine war cost in 4 years. And you're telling me we didn't get betrayed? You're telling me we didn't get scammed? You're telling me you're seriously going to consider voting Republican in 26? This is a story. This is from the Washington Post. It says, quote, the Pentagon has asked for $200 billion in funding for the war in Iran, according to a military and administration official, a significant sum, adding to the cost of an already divisive campaign. The request has been sent to the White House, the military official said, which will review it before any request for funds is formally submitted to Congress. The official spoke on condition of anonymity, and the request was reported earlier by the Washington Post. Obviously, it takes money to kill bad guys, said Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. As far as the $200 billion, I think that number could move, he said. Oh, okay, good. In 2014, the Congressional Research Service calculated that the U.S. had spent $815 billion in direct cost for the war in Iraq over 13 years. A recent report from the Council on Foreign Relations found the U.S. had dedicated $188 billion in aid to shore up Ukraine's war effort since Russia invaded in 2022. So $800 billion for Iraq, $200 billion for Ukraine, $200 billion for Iran. And we're not even 3 weeks in. It's actually going to cost us $230 billion in direct cost. So this is a fourth the cost of a 20-year war. It costs more than a 4-year war. We're not even 4 weeks in. And this is from the administration that said, we're putting Americans first. We're going to put all our money back in America to make America great again. We're going to fight no new wars. And we're going to extricate ourselves from the endless wars in the Middle East. And now we're going to find $200 billion to go to war in Iran. Why? Well, remember they said it's because Iran poses an imminent threat. Then they corrected themselves and said, well, Israel was going to hit them first. So because of Israel, we're now in a $200 billion endless war in Iran. Meanwhile, we can't deport even 500,000 people from our country per year. So what about any of this is working? Isn't this, like, let me just ask you, it's not a rhetorical question. What to you is the worst case scenario? How is it different than this? For people that are saying, well, it could have been worse. Well, at least it wasn't the Democrats. In your mind, what is the worst case scenario? What is the red line? They haven't even deported 500,000 people per year. Simultaneously, we are still at war in Ukraine, and they have plunged us into a war in Iran, which is a catastrophe. There is no exit plan, and it is going to cost us, in the end, nearly $250 billion, and Trump brought us there on behalf of Israel. So what about this is working? Exactly. What about this isn't the whole spirit of the movement making America great again? How is this making America great again? This is making America worse. This is setting us back. Another war sets us back. Canceling mass deportations, that's effectively an amnesty. That sets us back. We're up 10 million illegals and we're down $200 billion. We amnestied every illegal in America, and we're going to go into another war in the Middle East, depleting our stockpile, killing deterrents. They shot down an F-35 and they're learning about our technology. It's the opposite of, it's not just not living up to the promises. It's not politics made it messy. No, this is the opposite of what we were promised. And think about what we have been told in the past 10 years about anything. We have been told that we need fiscal restraint. The Republicans are constantly telling us about the debt ceiling and out of control spending and the deficit and the debt. We're being told we can't afford Medicaid. We can't afford Medicare. We need to raise the retirement age. We can't afford Social Security. Isn't this what they say? They said we need DOGE because we need austerity. We need to find trillions of dollars in waste, fraud, and abuse. So we're going to nickel and dime all the different departments and agencies. We're going to downsize the Department of Education and HHS and all the different departments and agencies. We're going to cut $800 billion from Medicaid. We're going to look into modifying the entitlements, kicking people off of Social Security because we're out of money. Oh, but Israel needs to topple the government in Iran? $200 billion. And they're enthusiastic about it. They're enthusiastic about it. $200 billion extra. Trump wants a $1.5 trillion defense budget, up from $1 trillion. Under Biden, I think in 2023, it was $800 billion. Trump in 2026 wants it to be $1.5 trillion. Unclear if that's including or excluding this $200 billion ask. Where's that money going to come from? Exactly. Where is that money actually going to come from? How are they going to pay for that? Last year, we had to cut $800 billion from Medicaid to pay for a corporate tax cut, where we permanently reduced the corporate tax rate from 35% to 23%. Now, we need to find other cuts from entitlements, healthcare, whatever, to pay for $200 billion for a war with Iran. So what does our tax money go towards? Exactly. It seems like it goes to Somali scammers. It goes to daycare centers and food drives and other scams. It's going to Somalian real estate projects, luxury cars, Lamborghinis and Ferraris for Somalis that hate us in Minneapolis. It's going to black people to pay for steak using SNAP, using their EBT card. It's going to illegal immigrants and their hospital visits. If you go to Rush Hospital in downtown Chicago, it's like Mogadishu. It's like the third world. God help you if you need health care in a major American city. Tell me I'm wrong. Go to an emergency room in New York City. Go to an emergency room in Chicago, in LA. It's like a fucking third world country. And those people don't have insurance. So it's going to those people. And it's going to public schools where they're going to say the Pledge of Allegiance in Spanish. It's going to Israel's decapitation campaign against Iran. And it's going to the richest people in the world, the AI oligarchs and scions who don't pay taxes, who don't have to abide by regulations, who get government contracts. This is making America great again. This is what it is all for. They told us a border wall, which cost $20 billion, that was too expensive in Trump's first term. Republicans, when they had the House and the Senate, they would not give Trump $17 billion for a border wall. They said, too much, costs too much money. We'll give you $1.6 billion. Mass deportations, they say, are too unpopular. We can't run on mass deportations at 26. It's turning everybody off. It's not popular anymore. But a war with Iran that costs $200 billion, well, that's going to give us a sense of urgency to pass an appropriations bill using budget reconciliation. They actually want to do it. It's never enough. We gave $27 billion to Israel in 2024. The war has cost us $30 billion so far, another $200 billion for a grand total of $260 billion all in, maybe close to $300 billion, factoring in the carrier strike groups, factoring in the war against the Houthis, factoring in all the other airstrikes. $300 billion for a war in Iran? No problem. Least popular war in contemporary history, 27% approval rating? Hey, no problem. Trump says, I don't have the yips about boots on the ground. I don't care if it's unpopular. We may do it. That's fine. As they watch their odds of winning the Senate collapse, as they watch the odds of a Republican to win in 2028 collapse, for them, that's fine. And this is why you need to realize this is the simplest form of the idea. It's not working. Okay? People are overthinking it. Don't overthink it. You're overthinking everything. People are working themselves up. They're setting plays, making moves, playing games. And they're saying, well, you see, we got to vote Republican because we got to get our guys in there and we got to kiss Trump's ass because we need him to do this, that. Here's the simplest form of the idea. It's not working, okay? Trump, Obama. Biden, Obama. There's no difference. It makes no difference. You vote for the candidate that's going to burn it all down. You vote for the candidate that's going to build back better. It makes no difference. You get a war in Ukraine regardless. The war in Ukraine started under Obama. Trump gave them lethal aid. It started really then under Biden when Russia invaded. Now under Trump, they're still getting money. It's all the same. Trump started Operation Warp Speed. He's the father of the vaccine. He got it. He got the vaccine. Trump shut down the economy. Then Biden mandated the vaccine and carried on the lockdowns. It does not matter. You always lose. The House always wins. Trump gets elected to build a wall. He doesn't do it. Biden then opens the country up to 10 million illegals. Trump gets elected to deport them. Then he decides he doesn't want to anymore. It's all the same. And this is why, from a propositional point of view, the only thing I'm interested in is anti, against, opposition. I'm not for Republican. I'm not for Trump. I'm not for Democrat. I'm against whoever runs that is against AIPAC, that is against the Iran war, that is against the elites, against the system, against the establishment. That's the only person I'm interested in going with. I'm not interested in more people explaining themselves to me, explaining how it works. Well, here's what happened. It doesn't matter what happened. Look at the result. You have people, they still call themselves Trump supporters. They recognize ostensibly that this is not going well. War in Iran, no deportations. And they're telling us, well, here's what we need to do. Here's why it is the way it is. Here's what What are you talking about? Look at the effects. Look at the result. It's not working. We're 10 years in and it's bullshit. So it failed. I'm never voting for this again. And I'm voting for the guy that's going to destroy all this. I'm voting for a destroyer. People say, you want to burn it all down and celebrate over the ashes. Yeah. Don't you? At this point, don't you? They say this guy, Nick Fuentes, he just wants to burn it all down just so he could be the king of the ashes. He just wants chaos and destruction. Yeah, at this point, I do. Somalis are scamming Minnesota out of $8 billion to buy luxury cars, fund construction projects. They're rich and they fucking hate us. We send ICE to investigate and deport them. A couple of protesters die and ICE just quits. They just leave. And it's still going on. Biden had open borders. 10 million people came here. They don't have health insurance. They can't afford to live here. They can't afford education. 10 million people are being subsidized. You are working 3 or 4 months out of the year for foreign nationals, leeching off of public services. And Trump will not deport them. That's over now. Trump got elected on no new wars, said he would end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours. War in Ukraine is still going on. Now they want $200 billion for Americans to die in Iran and to spend all our money so that Israel can become a superpower. They want a moratorium on AI. Data centers are the only thing driving any economic growth. Getting harder for everybody else. Elon Musk is going to become a trillionaire. Meanwhile, defaults on car loans and mortgages are through the roof. People have no savings. You're telling me there's something to salvage here? What's the alternative? People are telling us, well, you see, it's a team game. You got to be a team player. I don't feel like I'm on the team. When Trump is motherfucking us every day on True Social because we're not kissing Mark Levin's ass and cheerleading a war in Iran, and because we still want the Epstein files, I don't feel like I'm on the team. Donald Trump called Laura Loomer to celebrate the war in Iran. He had lunch with Mark Levin before bombing Iran. Lindsey Graham's on Air Force One selling him the war on behalf of Netanyahu. Meanwhile, I'm being told he doesn't want my vote because I still want the Epstein files. I don't feel like I'm on the team, actually. I'm not wearing a jersey. I didn't sign a contract. I'm not getting paid. And nobody passes the ball to me. So what do you mean we need to be a team player? Fuck you. And fuck all this. And MAGA, I'm out. If it's not America First, it's not good enough, and I don't want it. Don't let anybody tell you that America First isn't enough. They say, well, you see, we can't run on America First, and we can't deliver America First. That's just not practical. It's just politics. You just need to be patient. You just need to understand. Don't let anybody convince you of that, because Trump won the election in 2016 on America First. Lest anybody forget, that is where this whole movement came from. That is why Trump still has support. It all came from that in 2016. That's the winning formula. Is reindustrializing America with protection and tariffs, closing the border and having a nativist, restrictionist immigration policy, and having a restrained, non-interventionist foreign policy where we are not at war with the entire world, destabilizing every region, and spending all of our money building other countries. That is the original formula. Don't let anybody tell you that that's not good enough all of a sudden and we need to pull out this bag of tricks. We need the Chinese students. We need the Indian engineers. The universities need the students. The farmers need the labor. Wall Street needs the profits. They're trying to convince you to fight against yourself, to negotiate against yourself. And think about how shameless that is. How do you even go out there at the press conference and even say that and not hang your head in shame? They go out there and say, hey, man, we need $200 billion. It's not free to fight the bad guys. Hey, man, fuck you. Seriously? First of all, the bad guys, are we children? Stop insulting my intelligence. But he comes out there, they say, are you seriously considering? You just got done. And think about how sick it is. How much did we hear about the war in Ukraine and how expensive that is? Republicans ran in the 2022 midterms on auditing or cutting foreign aid to Ukraine. They ran in 2024 on ending the war in Ukraine. Now there's no end in sight there. It's not over. That's still going on. It still cost us all this money. And they come out and they tell us, hey, well, we need another $200 billion. We got to fight the bad guys. So do we all just have collective amnesia? The Republicans have said for literally the past 4 years, audit foreign aid to Ukraine, cut foreign aid to Ukraine, no more new wars. If Trump was elected, this would have never happened. It's still going on, and now they're starting another, and they shamelessly go out and say, yeah, we need $200 billion to fight the bad guys. And people eat it right up. They eat it right up. How much did they campaign about illegal immigration? About open borders. You need to elect us so that we can close the border. You need to hold the line in 2022 so that we can put some restrictions on Biden's open borders immigration policy. 2024, elect us. We'll do mass deportations. 26, they say, I think we just about did it. We don't need mass deportations. It is about taking public sentiment and steering it into a ditch where it's not going to roil the political system. That's really what this is. It's hot and cold. The Democrats do what they need to do and rally up their people. The Democrats redistribute the wealth and they let in all the illegal aliens and they have all the woke stuff. The rubes get mad. The rubes overthrow the Democrats. They get in. And then the Republicans bomb Israel, genocide Gaza, give all the money to little tech. And the Democrats are mad. You see how this, and it just oscillates. It just keeps turning. And I'm in favor only of a political solution where we step outside of the wheel. Step outside of that hamster wheel that's always turning. Trump is not that person. It's not that movement. It isn't working here. $200 billion. Are you kidding me? And I'm old enough to remember they literally told us $17 billion is far too much for a border wall, for an 18-foot steel bollard fence in only half of the southern border. Oh, it's too much. $260 billion to bomb Iran? Hey, well, if it'll break the stalemate in Congress, let's fully send it. We're going to talk a little bit about the operations in Iran briefly. This war has no end in sight. As you know, there is a stalemate right now. The United States is unable to topple Iran's regime, unable to suppress their fire. In the meantime, Iran is creating economic pressure against the United States and the whole world by choking off the energy and other commodities that flow through the Strait of Hormuz. Trump is faced with two options. He can either escalate to victory by invading Iran and toppling the regime, which might be ruinous for America, or he retreats, withdraws, begs Iran for a ceasefire, and it's a strategic defeat for the United States. He's looking for a way out, and he settled on a third option, which is he is going to try to forcibly reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Last week, he initiated a new phase of the conflict, launching an energy war. He bombed Karg Island in the Persian Gulf. And then a couple of days ago, Trump and Israel struck against Iran's South Pars gas fields in order to pressure Iran to agree to open up the Strait of Hormuz, thinking that maybe if we increase the economic pressure on Iran, as they have against us, then maybe they will accede to our demands. And that didn't work. So today, the operation, a military operation to force the strait open, has begun. Trump sent in airplanes and helicopters to bomb the Strait of Hormuz, its islands, its coastline, and territory, in a bid to eventually, potentially invade the coastline or the islands in the strait and ultimately regain control of the shipping there. And this is a story, this is from the Journal. It says, quote, "The U.S. and its allies have intensified the battle to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, sending low-flying attack jets over the sea lanes to blast Iranian naval vessels and Apache helicopters to shoot down Iran's deadly drones. The stepped-up operation is part of a multi-stage Pentagon plan to reduce the danger from Iranian armed boats, mines, and cruise missiles, which have halted ship traffic through the waterway since early March. If the danger can be reduced, the U.S. could send U.S. warships through the strait and eventually escort vessels in and out of the Persian Gulf. But it will likely take weeks for the U.S. to clear out Iran's web of assets that have harassed traffic through the choke point." Air Force General Dan Kane, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, revealed the operation in a Pentagon news conference, saying that heavily armed A-10 warplanes, known as Warthogs, along with Apache attack helicopters, were flying missions over the strait or off the southern coast of Iran. Despite the strikes, Iran is still believed to have a vast stockpile of mines, cruise missiles on trucks, and hundreds of undamaged boats in hidden facilities with deeply dug tunnels along the coast and on islands. The general said, quote, "I think it will take weeks to reach a point where there can be safe operations in the strait. Even then, a lot of the Iranian assets will survive." So the latest stage in the conflict is they are preparing this multi-stage operation. They're really doing it, where they're going to try to use the military to open up the strait. And I don't even understand how that's going to be possible. You need to understand about the Strait of Hormuz. At its narrowest point, it is 24 miles long. Do you know how small that is? 24 miles long at the narrowest point. And what that means is that Iranians that are hundreds of miles inland inside of Iran can reliably hit ships in the strait with drones, ballistic missiles, cruise missiles. And so if you want to prevent drones and missiles from hitting ships in the strait, you have to clear a radius hundreds of miles inside of Iran's territory. Massive, vast swath of territory. You need to make sure there are zero drones, zero missiles of any kind being launched and reaching ships in the strait. It's impossible. Cannot be done. Last year, we bombed Yemen 1,000 times, and we couldn't stop them from bombing the Red Sea, which is far bigger. Iran is many, many, many times the size of Houthi-controlled Yemen, has a significantly larger population and military, and a huge industrial base. And apparently, they're still getting resupplied from China with new drones and parts for missiles, they say, from Tajikistan. Last year, we could not stop the Houthis from bombing the Red Sea. You think we can stop Iran now from bombing the Strait of Hormuz? With exponentially more territory, more people, bigger industrial base, more projectiles, and a much smaller target? How is that even going to happen? They say, well, we're bombing all their ships and their islands and tunnels and this, that, and the other. Still, you're always going to have the threat of drones from inside the country. They say the operation will take several weeks at the minimum. And they say even after this operation is complete, and it looks like they're planning to have Marines land on islands in the Strait of Hormuz or near the strait, even if you're able to do all these things, okay, we're going to take the islands. That is a suicide mission all by itself. IEDs, tunnels, incoming drones and missiles, even if you're able to do all this without a hitch. Marines are there. They've taken islands, airstrikes and helicopter attacks, anti-missile systems, whatever. Even still, they say, after 3 weeks, we're still not going to be able to guarantee that every ship is going to make it through the strait without being hit. So what exactly is the goal here? And you realize there really is no way out of this. This is a war where there is no plan, no exit strategy. It's impossible. And so this is very quickly starting to feel like Iraq, where no one really seems to have any clue how this is ever going to end. Iran, if you haven't been able to stop them from shooting now, if you haven't collapsed the government by now, you might never be able to do it. So the Strait of Hormuz is indefinitely closed. Okay, well, if the Strait of Hormuz is indefinitely closed, then oil prices are just going to keep going up and up and up. And some estimates say that oil could hit $200 per barrel. They say that's not out of the question. By late April, they say if oil is up to $138 a barrel through the end of April, and if it sustains that for weeks and months, you have a full-on global recession. Well, they're saying the timeline to even have any semblance of an effective operation in the Strait is at least another 3 weeks. The Marines are going to take a week to get there. The Gerald Ford is going to be out of commission for at least another week. What happens when we're still in Iran by the end of April? What do you do then? Global economy's down. Americans surely are going to die, maybe by the dozens, perhaps by the hundreds if you try to invade the mainland, coastline, islands. God forbid if Marines actually try to set foot on the island, surely there's going to be an IED waiting for them. Surely there's going to be shoulder-mounted missiles, drones, all that stuff is going to be waiting for them. So here we are in late April or May. Oil prices have been persistently high for months. Maybe we're cracking $140 a barrel. Maybe it's $200 a barrel. You have runaway inflation in Europe and the United States. You have energy shortages in Vietnam and Taiwan and Korea, Japan. You have dozens, hundreds maybe of dead Americans, depleted U.S. stockpiles of standoff weapons, standoff munitions, radar systems, THAAD systems, Patriot missile batteries. What do you do then? Do you retreat after months of war? At that point, do you withdraw? There's literally no end in sight to the conflict. And that's the scary part. I don't think anybody even realizes where this is going. It gets very uncomfortable because you realize that defeat is really not an option. This is something that I don't think the United States is going to walk away from. I don't think the United States even can walk away from it at this point. It just seems impossible that the Iranians would even agree to stop bombing the Strait of Hormuz without preconditions, that the United States is unwilling to give. But even if they were, they might not stop. It's not Trump's temperament. We can't afford to lose our deterrent credibility. That's when you start to think, is a tactical nuke going to be deployed? Is it going to be a full-fledged ground invasion? Honestly, what are the options for extricating ourselves from the conflict? And this is why they're asking for $200 billion. I hate to say that, but they're not asking for $200 billion to replace Patriot missile batteries. They're asking for $200 billion because they're getting ready for a much wider and much more intense conflict. And I don't think people are ready for that. And that's the latest on the operations. Running out of time, so we'll leave that part short a little bit. And we're going to move on. We'll take a look. We'll see what you guys are saying. Hate to leave it on a bad note like that, but this is about as bad as it gets. All across the board, politically, strategically. This is a bad scene. All right, but we're going to move on. We're going to take a look. We'll see what you guys have to say about all this.
All right, so let's get into it. Donald Trump's advisors, his consultants, anybody around him that has his ear, they failed him. Donald Trump's, one of his greatest attributes, I used to believe, was reading the room, understanding exactly how people felt and truly understanding it to the point where you can then make an appeal. And he was able to do it in a very real way, right? Part of him understanding deal making, right? He's the art of the deal guy, is understanding that person's perspective, what they want, what gets them to tick, what gets them going, right? What is their sore spot? What is the spot that they need soothed in this negotiation, right? Donald Trump is completely out of his mind when it comes to perhaps, let me say perhaps, when it comes to his perception of how Americans are looking at him right now and how his own people and his own supporters are looking at him right now. He surrounded himself with so many yes men, and there's a lot of people, unfortunately, that will just go along with the MAGA movement because that's just how our political system works. Even though George Washington warned against this political party system, perhaps this is why, because you get to a point where it doesn't matter what your candidate, right? Your candidate says. Even if your candidate does something that doesn't align with your values and your agenda based on the things that you voted for them to accomplish, it doesn't matter because what's on the other side is so evil, right? What's on the other side is even worse. We've just been so accustomed to voting for the lesser of two evils, but this isn't necessarily about that. This is Donald Trump not reading the room and understanding that the things that he is doing are extremely unpopular and make him look insane. Donald Trump looks like all of the things that he used to criticize Joe Biden, used to criticize Barack Obama, George Bush, for getting us involved in these wars, and a lot of the people in politics who were supporting these wars to do Israel's bidding or for whatever other reason Trump thought it was for. Either way, it wasn't for American interest. He used to call these things out. We were just showing a clip of Donald Trump talking about, I think it was Nancy Pelosi, and saying that she should have done a better job in trying to get Bush out of his presidency, impeach Bush. And he was saying it because Bush led us into a war under false pretenses. He lied to us and got us into a war where we were killing people that we didn't need to kill and having Americans die that didn't need to die, right? And he even went on to say, and there they impeached Clinton, and what he did was pretty much inconsequential, right? He just got a little head in the office, whatever, right? So he didn't say it like that, but that's just me talking to y'all. And then you look at Donald Trump in his state right now, and it's really just sad looking at it. And the reason why I started off by saying that anybody who has an ear or who has Donald Trump's ear, he should fire them immediately. He should cut off friends, family, doesn't matter. If they're not keeping it real with him and telling him what he needs to hear, then he needs to remove them from his inner circle. Now, what exactly should they be telling him right now? You see, I took a sip for dramatic purposes. What they should be telling him, and of course, this is just my opinion, is that he needs to apologize sincerely. He needs to back out of this situation that we're in. And in his apology that is sincere, he needs to explain, I got us into a situation that did not turn out how I wanted it to turn out. And I made a big mistake, and I apologize. And because of my decisions, a lot of people have died unnecessarily. We've had a lot of destruction. There's been, chaos created in this region that didn't have to be created. We've had our allies hit. We've had Americans once again die. We've killed other people, and I apologize for it. This is where he's going to have to finesse it a little bit, probably, unless he's just okay with being impeached. I don't think he's going to come out and say, as if he's going to come out and do any of this, but I don't think when he apologizes, I'm putting it out there, when he does apologize, I don't think he's going to come out there and say, I got us into this for the wrong reasons. What I do think he can say is that I thought that this would end up in a better way for America. It hasn't. And because of that, I apologize. I apologize to America, and I apologize to Iran, and I apologize to a lot of our allies that have been dragged into this, and also to our allies that I tried to drag into this and maybe said certain things that I shouldn't have said about them not wanting to get involved. And perhaps I should have appreciated and saw that as a sign of strength, but also as some guidance as to why they don't want to get involved and help support us in our efforts with Iran. Now, not only am I going to apologize to the Iranian people, but I'm also going to help them as best we can. We caused some chaos with them, whether it was the sanctions. We created a lot of chaos that led to a lot of these uprisings, that led to a lot of the rebellions or protests, whatever it is that you want to call it. And a lot of these reasons we use to justify, us getting involved in this war. And to be totally honest, it just hasn't been good for America, and it hasn't been good for anybody involved. Now, I don't know if this is when he wants to touch on, Israel. Maybe he'll just leave that to the side. I obviously don't anticipate him saying anything, at this point. saying that, oh, Israel got us in this, Joe Kent was right. Not going to say that. But what he can say is that based on what I've done to the Iranian people, not only is an apology necessary, and that apology, of course, is, for the sanctions if he deems necessary, or the apology is just for, the actions that America participated in and take accountability for it. And taking that accountability, we're going to work with you to figure out how we can help your leadership, help your people as much as possible. Now, Trump doesn't need to say what I'm getting ready to say, but we know that a lot of our propaganda and to go along with those sanctions led to a lot of Iranians fighting back against their government and doing the protests. And a lot of people were killed because of it, based on the numbers that a lot of people are saying, right? So I think Donald Trump needs to take responsibility for a lot of those things. To what extent he will, take full accountability for everything as the leader, that would be the right thing to do. You're the leader. You have to absolve all that accountability and responsibility. Can't place blame on this person or that person. Joe Kent doesn't need to be saying you were fed misinformation. Perhaps if you want to stand up for Israel and really just standing up for America as the president, you take accountability and say, it doesn't matter who fed me information, whether it was misinformation or proper information. It's my job and I'm intelligent enough and you all trust me to do this job and to dissect what information is given to me and do what's best for America. Now, if Donald Trump comes out and does that, he will regain the fans that he lost. And I believe that even though a lot of people may not admit it, there will be a certain respect that people who probably never could have dreamed of respecting him or having any ounce of respect for him, where they may just give him like a little nod, where it's like, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. It takes a lot for you to get up and acknowledge that. Now, I'm talking about it from a principle moral standpoint. Now, the reason why I said that he should fire all his advisors, especially his political advisors, because this would be the best thing for his political career as well. Now, a lot of people may say he's not concerned with his political career. Donald Trump is concerned with his legacy. And part of a politician's career is their legacy, right? A lot of people in politics aren't even defined till years after they're gone. So this not only would be good for his political career, but more importantly, and most importantly, this is just the right thing to do. It's good. It's the humane thing to do. It's the righteous thing to do. This is the only way out. Nick mentioned that there's no way out to this situation. There's no way out. We don't even know what we're there for. So to try to have a way out, and when I say there's no way out of Donald Trump getting out of there, I can see any other way than what I just described. As far as having any hope of, and I don't want to make it seem like I'm saying this strictly from a political standpoint of redemption, but just from a humane standpoint, like you need to redeem yourself, bro. You caused a lot of this dirt. You caused a lot of this demonic evil behavior. You need to address that and take accountability for that. And not only just address it with words, but address it with actions. That's why I said there needs to be serious intent and actions, I should say, forget intent, actions to help Iran, whatever that means. And I'm sure there's a lot of ways that America can help Iran. So that needs to be done. Just my opinion. Just my opinion. We saw the Joe Kent interview. He actually called Iran's leadership very pragmatic with this entire thing. Certain stuff came out where I didn't even know that they had a religious fatwa to where the Ayatollah Khomeini, he said that that's haram, having a nuclear weapon. They don't even believe in nuclear weapons, according to, if we believe that, you could choose to believe it or not believe it. But one thing that does seem to be true is that Iran seems to be very intelligent people with some very valuable resources. And those two things, as Joe Kent pointed out in that interview with Tucker, using those two things, you can either build a nuclear weapon if you really want one. And based on them saying that they destroyed everything a year ago, but now they're weeks out from making one, it seems like they are very intelligent, or we just lied and we didn't really destroy as much as we said we did, as we patted ourselves on the back and all the neocons and all the Trump D-riders that still wanted to support him were celebrating. So it's one or the other. Everything that Iran has done has come across more aligned with what Joe Ken is saying about their leadership, them being pragmatic, and even what Donald Trump said. He said these are high-level people. These are very intelligent people that we're dealing with. This is high-level chess. So if you're dealing with high-level intelligent people that don't seem to be showing any threat, that don't seem to really have an interest in any nuclear capability aside from just the point of having some to perhaps deter countries like Israel, who once again, they're still they still have nuclear ambiguity where they won't say whether they have the weapons or not. That seemed to be the only reason why Iran wanted it from a defense standpoint to now where you have something where at least they won't strike us because they know that if they do strike us, there's a retaliation that could occur that will put them in a lot of danger as well. I assume that's why most countries want nuclear weapons. I don't think most countries want nuclear weapons because they actually want to use them. That's part of having the nuclear weapon, that you don't have to use and exert certain force because they know that you have the potential to nuke them. And any logical person, when you take bias out of it, if you look from an Iran standpoint and protecting their country, their government, their people, you can see why they would want a nuclear weapon by what's going on right now. You got Trump threatening, we could get rid of Iran in seconds or whatever he's saying. You got Israel who's acting on their own, if you believe that, and working in cahoots, clearly bullying America, what it seems like, and pushing their agenda, not pushing the American agenda. Not doing what's best for America. No, they're acting on their own, as Bibi Netanyahu said. I don't believe it. I believe that Trump was aware of it. And if they were acting on their own, then that's even more of a disrespectful slap in the face by Israel to even think that they can conduct a mission without letting America know when we are your protector. So my recommendation would be Trump apologize. That's the only way out that I see. The only proper, righteous, just way out of this. And once again, that apology goes beyond words, but with actions. Y'all let me know what y'all think. There's people that I've seen certain situations where people that hate each other, I can't stand it, I would never agree. Apologizing shows a lot of strength, and it shows a lot of care, and it shows a lot of consideration. Think of all the ways, the words that people use to describe Trump. You would never picture him apologizing. And perhaps from a strategic standpoint as well, but I don't want to lead with that. I want to lead with the righteous standpoint, or prioritize that righteous standpoint. There's a reason why perhaps the righteous standpoint is the thing that would have you regarded in the highest favor or the best favor of the people that you represent. So I think he owes it to us. I think he owes it to us, and I think he owes it to, in some ways, the Iranian people. In a lot of ways, to the Iranian people. You're negotiating with them, and you allow your quote unquote greatest ally to strike them, and then you strike them. So let's get into a couple of things that Nick discussed. I know he started off, he mentioned certain things with the Pentagon, where now he said it was just rumors before. Now the Pentagon is asking for $200 billion. It's wild to think that this war already, if they get approved of that $200 billion, the commitment will be far more than the war in Ukraine for 4 years. What is this, day 20, day 21 or something like that? So we're finishing week 3. Already have spent upwards of $30 billion, I believe. And now they're asking for another 200. That's $230 billion. And this war has been costing us, I believe, about $1.9 billion a day. So now in about 120 days or so, or, less than, less than 4 months of fighting with Iran for what we still don't know. The country does not want us over there, but we're getting ready to spend more money than the support that we've given to Ukraine, and with the Ukraine and Israel, the Ukraine and Russia war over 4 years. Just to put things in perspective. So it's a number of contradicting messages that have been put out by Trump's administration. Like, bro, I would expect that even if people don't resign, that there's more people that end up getting fired. I would hope that there's more people that either resign or get fired, because they're either going to get fired because they're standing up saying what needs to be said, like, yo, this is ridiculous, we shouldn't be doing this, and they get fired, or they just walk away, more like a Joe Kent type of thing. So let's move on to Nick mentioned some things. I don't even want to touch on it for too long with the mass deportations. It's been clear that mass deportations, it was just a rallying cry, during the campaign. Clearly, Trump either, I don't know actually if it is clearly. I was going to say clearly Trump had no intention of doing it. Um, Seems like he had no intention of going about it the right way. The way that they went about it, it just seems like were you just trying to cause chaos so then you could stop? Like we don't know what it was. We don't know what it was. The fact that, and this may seem a little bit, I don't know. Does this not sound crazy to y'all that ICE agents were able to go into homes and like just looking back on it now that we're looking back on it, ICE agents going into people's homes of migrants that may or may not be illegal with no warrant. It's like, what else? Like, what other just cause would you have to go in there from a legal perspective rather than just like you're just breaking into somebody's home at that point, aren't you? Like, what's the difference between that and breaking and entering? And the problem is, this was never a realistic thing. And we also have to talk about the foundation of the problem with Joe Biden letting in 10 million people. If you let in 10 million people illegally, it's just not realistic that you can, have mass deportations that come anywhere close to the amount of people that came in, and especially conducting them in the way that Donald Trump was going about doing it. You're not working with the police. Like, come on. So you're not going to work with the police and you're going to go to people's homes without warrants. Who exactly are you working with? You're just a vigilante at that point. It's not realistic. And, Donald Trump put these ICE agents in a very dangerous spot, and he put the American people, most importantly, in a very dangerous spot. And we saw what happened in a lot of these situations. So now they have the new person come in, Mark, I forget his name. He's going to come in and now he'll be running things. And I believe Nick said that his job is to just not be on the news or something like that. That part should go without being said. You know what I mean? Like, you should be able to do your job in a respectful, manageable way, practical way, to where you're not on the news. But if your job is to deport people and get rid of people who snuck in this country illegally, then that's what you should go about doing. I don't see any argument against that. Like, I think it's a dangerous precedent that you set for a country to where people can just come in here illegally. Like, if you want people to come in and you want to change the rules, then change the rules. But for people to just be incentivized to come here illegally, I think that was a terrible thing that the Biden-Harris administration did, and put the country in a place where it broke the infrastructure in a lot of ways, with now the money that's being paid for a lot of these people. And it's just wrong. There's people that waited online to go about things in the right way and are still waiting. But that's the precedent that you set. And a lot of these are not, this are not refugees that I'm talking about. And if we talk about the refugees, and if you're complaining about them, then perhaps you should be one of those people that are on the side complaining about these wars and all the chaos that we create in a lot of these countries, whether it's through economic crisis with the sanctions that we're putting on these countries to then cause all these uprisings. So then we can creep in and act like the hero and try to create some regime change. And then where do these people go? So these wars that we get involved with, they lead to a lot of the things that we're then going to complain about. But as far as just the mass deportations, this was just, a disaster waiting to happen, and just the disaster that it's turned into. And now Trump, who I guess is just going to act like it's just not a thing. This is another area that he should apologize for, because he just did a terrible job on it. He did a terrible job, and it's gotten to the point where it's like now they're turning their back on deporting people and doing your job. It's like police. This happened with the pandemic and after George Floyd. Police officers, they were taking so much heat, they just said, all right, we just going, you saying defund the police. All right, well, we not going to be sticking our heads out there policing like that. If it was just that, I'm not saying that this is the right response, but it's a natural response. It's one that could have been predicted. So that's the position that we're in. I think Nick summed it up pretty well. He said Trump is not Caesar, and one thing, he's really just not the guy. He's not the guy. Everybody thought he was the guy, but it takes maturity to stand up and recognize, like, yo, this person that I perhaps I voted for, is not the guy, and he's ruining the country in a lot of ways and leading us to a dark place that we don't even know exactly what it is. So, and not only that, but he's actually preventing, like Nick said, he's gatekeeping perhaps who could be the guy, whoever that is, because now unless you align with the things that Trump is saying, if you call Trump out, you know that you're not going to get his support. A lot of people just want his support. That's why Joe Kent kind of walked on eggshells, even in the letter and an interview where he keeps acting like Trump was just fed misinformation, which I think is BS. Trump understands what's going on, and he made certain decisions to put the country in a very vulnerable place, and he has to stand on that. So, yeah, I think Nick mentioned no matter who we vote for, we get the same result. I don't know if we get the same strategy because they each go about accomplishing things in a different way because they're appealing to different groups. But I tell you what, we get the same thing as far as a government that doesn't prioritize the American people. And one side will push one radical nature on the other side, and the other side will push radical nature on the other side, get us involved in wars and all type of stuff that we're experiencing right now. So what are we going to do to demand better? What are we going to do to demand better? That's what I'll leave y'all with. Don't really have much more to add on, from that standpoint. Nick keeps mentioning all these Caldwells. I will say that article about Christopher Caldwell, hopefully Christopher Caldwell gives us Caldwells a better name and reputation than what was the guy, Dan Caldwell, that he was talking about, looked like my boy right here, the great Bambino. So on that note, y'all know what to do. Let me know where my bias may be coming in and creating some blind spots. Let me know what your thoughts are, where I may be wrong, where I may be completely wrong, and maybe even where you agree. Or what would your strategy be? Tell me what your solution would be, how you see Donald Trump being able to get us out of this situation in the best way. Not to save face, not to do all that, the righteous thing to do. All right? So from a humane standpoint, not just a political standpoint. Maybe not at all a political standpoint. A godly standpoint. All right, so like, subscribe, turn your notifications on. Word to Big Bro Robert, who always reminds us to control the algorithm and never let the algorithm control us. And on that note, I shall see y'all on the next video. Ew.
TB, GI, TC. It's the black guy in the corner, but they'd rather see a nigga on the corner. They say I'm stealing Nick's clips like I'm stealing Nick's chick, not knowing that I hit him first week for the lick. I said, Nick, I could post here while you post there. Let's run the ads up, then let's meet up over there. Let's figure out a split that's honorable and fair. Tell me where you trying to take it. Bro, I'll meet you there. 1600 Penn, Wash, D.C. Swear I saw the vision riding through the DMV. I envision prayers, but I could do VP. Hillbilly, Elegy, fuck, I look like JD. Shout out my cheat code, Dave and Karen raised me. And my big bro, a nuclear family. And they don't like that. Strong fathers in the crib, BLM for that. LBJ society created all that. Victimhood mentality, I can't embrace that. And everything they taught in school, assume it's all cap. Everything I said I'd be, I am that. Everything I said I'd be, I am that. Everything I said I'd be, I am that. Ain't no introduction, just some fun facts. In case you were wondering, I am that. I know you heard me hit it 3 times for Dr. Umar. Shout out to Umar, man. We ain't kicking nobody when they down. And shout out to everybody that continues to show love, support, appreciating the message that I'm giving y'all along with the bro Nick's message. We gonna keep pushing, man. And shout out to the haters too, cause y'all in the comments heavy too. y'all the ones that gave me the inspiration to create this song. They kept saying like, who's the random black guy in the corner? I am.